Good morning and welcome to the lecture number 10 of the course Water Resource Systems Planning, Modeling Techniques and Analysis. In the previous lectures, we have been talking about the linear programming problem, and in the last lecture, I introduced the motivation for the simplex algorithm through a simple example. If you recall, we talked about the basic variables, basic solution and non-basic variables, basic feasible solution and so on. And then towards the end of the last lecture, I introduced a problem and then went on to write the first simplex W for that particular problem. So, in the previous lecture, we have looked at the motivation for the simplex method through a simple example, and then we introduced here what are the basic variables, what are the non-basic variables and so on. If you recall, we have n number of variables and m number of constraints. So, we have n minus m variables which are set to 0, and these are called as a non-basic variables. So, those variables which we set to 0 are called as a non-basic variables, and then we solve for the m number of variables, and these are called as a basic variables. So, there are m number of equality constraints, that is m number of equations. By setting n minus m variables to 0, we solve for these m variables, and these variables for which we solve are called as a basic variables, and then we define the basis as consisting of the m basic variables. So, this is what we saw in the previous lecture, and then I started introducing the simplex algorithm. We will continue that discussion today from where we left in the previous lecture. So, we were talking about this example where we have the objective function to be of maximization type. So, maximize z is equal to 3 x 1 plus 5 x 2. Recall that this is the same problem that we have solved in the graphical method. So, we will relate this problem by solving it through the simplex method and compare the solution with what we obtained in the graphical method. So, 3 x 1 plus 5 x 2, x 1 less than or equal to 4, 2 x 2 less than or equal to 12, 3 x 1 plus 2 x 2 less than or equal to 18. These are the constraints. Then we have the non-negativity of decision variables, x 1 greater than 0, greater than or equal to 0, and x 2 greater than or equal to 0. So, in the previous lecture, I just explained how we write the first simplex W. They are called as Ws. So, we can either use iteration 1 or W1 and so on. So, I will be sticking to the terminology iteration. So, from one iteration to the next iteration, how we proceed is what we will see today. As I mentioned, the objective function itself, we write it as another equation. So, your objective function was z is equal to 3 x 1 plus 5 x 2. What we do is, we write it as z minus 3 x 1 minus 5 x 2 minus whatever slack variables you have used with 0 coefficients as first row. So, we write it as row 0, and right hand side will be 0 for this. Then x 1 plus the x 3 is equal to 4. We have introduced the slack variable x 3, and that we call it as row 1. 2 x 2 plus x 4 is equal to 12. We have introduced the slack variable x 4. Then 3 x 1 plus 2 x 2 plus x 5 is equal to 18. We have introduced a slack variable x 5. As I mentioned, we should start with an initial basic feasible solution, and typically in cases like this where you have one slack variable associated with each of the constraints, you start with setting the original variables, in this case x 1 and x 2, the original variables to 0, which means you choose the original variables to be non-basic. Typically, what we are then doing is that we are starting the solution with the origin x 1 is equal to 0, x 2 is equal to 0. So, these are the non-basic variables. x1 and x2, and you choose the slack variables as the basic variables x3, x4 and x5. So, the way we write is, as I mentioned in the previous class, z is always in the basis, then you have x3, x4, x5 as the basic variables. So, the basis consists of z, x3, x4, x5. Then we write this column will identify the rows, row 0, 1, 2 and 3. Then we pick up the coefficients of each of the variables including z. So, z we write the coefficient of z in each of the rows. As you can see, in row 0 z has a coefficient of 1, in all other rows z has a coefficient of 0, and therefore, we write 1, 0, 0, 0. Similarly, corresponding to each of the variables x1, x2, x3, x4, x5 etc., we write the coefficients in the corresponding rows. So, look at x1. In row 0, it has a coefficient of -3, and in row 1 it has a coefficient of 1 plus 1. In row 2 it has a coefficient of 2. I am sorry, we are writing from here, that is x3 I am sorry, here you just look at the coefficients of x1. Let me repeat that. In the coefficient of x1 in row 0 is -3, in row 1 it is +1, in row 2 it is 0, in row 3 it is 3. This is what you write here. Then x2 similarly, in row 0 it is -5, in row 1 it is 0, in row 2 it is 2, and in row 3 it is 2, and so on. You write all of these, and x3, x4, x5 being the slack variables will have a coefficient of 1 exactly in one of the rows, and in all other rows they will have coefficients of zeros. The bi here is the right hand side value of each of the constraints or each of the equations here. So, for row 0 the bi is 0, for row 1 bi is 4, this is 12 and this is 18. So, this is how you write a tableau, and in fact, this is how you start the iterations. This is the first iteration and the first tableau is written like this. At any iteration, the first question that you would ask is this solution optimal? Recall that the solution is read like this. This is the variable z is equal to 0, x3 is equal to 4, x4 is equal to 12 and x5 is equal to 18, with the non-basic variables x1 is equal to 0 and x2 is equal to 0 as the solution. So, the solution in any iteration can be read from the variable here and the value here, variable value and so on. Why x3 will be equal to 4? You look at this, we have set x1 is equal to 0, therefore, x3 will be equal to 4. We have set x1 equal to 0, x2 equal to 0, therefore, x4 is equal to 12 and so on. So, this is how you read the solutions in any of the tableau. From the basis you pick up the variable and from the right hand side you pick up the associated value. Then once we construct this table, we ask this question, is this solution optimal? Whether the current solution is optimal or not is decided based on the coefficients in the z row. If there is at least one coefficient here which has a negative value, it means that the z value can be further improved by bringing that particular variable into the basis. The current basis consists of x3, x4 and x5. There are two variables with a negative value. So, if there is at least one variable with a negative coefficient in the z row or the 0th row, the solution, the current solution is not optimal, and therefore, you need to improve the solution. So, the answer to the first question in this particular case, namely whether the solution is optimal, the answer is this solution is not optimal, because there is at least one variable with a coefficient, with a negative coefficient in row 0. Then, if the solution is not optimal, we need to bring exactly one of the currently non-basic variables into the basis. So, x1 and x2 are the currently non-basic variables. We bring either x1 or x2 into the basis. So, the next question that we have to ask is, out of the currently non-basic variables, which among the currently non-basic variables, which one has to enter the basis, and which among the currently basic variables will make way for the entering variable. The basis, the variable that enters the basis is called as the entering variable. The variable that exits the basis is called as the departing variable. So, we have to identify which is the entering variable and which is the departing variable. So, at each iteration then we ask these questions, whether the current solution is optimal. The solution is optimal only if all the coefficients in the z row are non-negative. As I said, all these coefficients here must be non-negative. If they are not, if there is at least one value which is negative, it means that the solution can be improved further, and therefore, that is not the current solution is not the optimal solution. Then, if the solution is not optimal, we have to identify which is the variable that has to enter the basis, which is not currently in the basis, and therefore, it is a non-basic variable, which is the variable that has to enter the basis. So, we have to identify which is the entering variable. As I mentioned in the last class, you look at the coefficients here -3, -5, you are interested in improving the z value the fastest, and therefore, the variable which has the highest negative coefficient will be the entering variable. So, we identify the variable with the highest negative coefficient in the z row as the entering variable. Then, once we identify this, we have to see which is the departing variable. For the departing variable, we compute what are called as the Bi by Aij values, but first let us start with this entering variable. I will explain how we identify the departing variable once we identify the entering variable. So, this is a iteration number 1. This was the table that we formulated. We now identify x2 as having the highest negative coefficient in the z row or the 0th row, and therefore, this becomes the entering variable. So, we identify this as the entering variable, and then we put corresponding to that column, we mark it like this, and this is called as a pivotal column. So, we identify the entering variable, and the column associated with the entering variable is called as a pivotal column. You have the Bi values here, which are the right hand side values. Now, what I am going to do now is to identify which is the departing variable. Then in the previous lecture, you recall what we discussed about which is the variable that departs. The variable which reaches 0 first. As you start increasing the value of x2, there is one of the currently basic variables which will reach 0 first, and that is what that is a variable that will depart, and we have to identify that. For that, what we do is you calculate Bi by Aij values. Now, this variable we are denoting the variable by j, and I is the row. So, Bi by Aij, which means the right hand side value of the ith row by the coefficient of the jth variable. Now, jth variable is the entering variable. So, we are saying entering variable is j. So, we are calculating 0 by -5 whenever it is a positive value. So, we calculate this as the variable with the minimum Bi by Aij is the departing value, where I is the row and j is the entering variable. This is calculated only if both Bi and Aij are positive. So, this is what we do, Bi, and then entering variable, we have identified the column and we start calculating Bi by Aij. This part you understand correctly, then everything is simple. So, we calculate Bi by Aij if both of these are non-negative. So, here it is negative, therefore, you do not calculate. Here it is 0, therefore, you do not calculate. That is 4 by 0 is infinity, do not calculate that. Then 12 divided by 2 is 6 and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So, this is how you calculate BI by AIJ. So, AIJs are the coefficients in the column of the entering variable. These are the AIJs. Now, you have two values of BI by AIJs. The variable corresponding to the minimum of the BI by AIJ will depart. We have identified the entering variable. Now, we are going to identify the departing variable. So, the departing variable is that variable which has a minimum value of BI by AIJ among all the values that you have calculated. Now, these are positive values. So, this becomes the departing variable and then we identify this as pivotal row. So, you identified pivotal column associated with the entering variable. You identify now a pivotal row associated with the departing variable and the departing variable is identified based on the minimum value of BI by AIJ and BI by AIJ is calculated only when it is positive. So, we identified the entering variable, we identified the departing variable. Now, which means that we formulate the next basis for the next iteration as Z x3 and x2 here in place of x4. So, x4 goes out and x2 comes in and then x5 remains as it is. So, at every iteration exactly one currently non-basic variable enters the basis and exactly one currently basic variable leaves the basis. So, we identify the entering variable and the departing variable. Now, we write the next tableau by using the Gauss-Jordan elimination method. So, we do the actually canonical form. We write the tableau in the canonical form by using the Gauss-Jordan elimination method. So, I will explain how we do this. This is the pivotal row. First, we rewrite the pivotal row by simply dividing. Okay, incidentally, this element here, which is at the intersection of the pivotal column and the pivotal row, is called as a pivot point or simply pivot. It is called as a pivot. So, we go to the next iteration. First, what we do is we rewrite the basis Z x3 and x2 and x5. 0, 1, 2, 3, this is just a row identification. Z, this remains the same. First, we rewrite the pivotal row by dividing the pivotal row by pivot value. So, we write it as 0 by 2, 2 by 2, 0 by 2, 1 by 2, 0 by 2, 12 by 2 up to BI. So, this is what we do here. Okay, let me explain it this way. We are now going to write the tableau for the next iteration. The first step that we do is that we change the basis by replacing the departing variable with the entering variable. So, in this case the departing variable was x4 and entering variable was x2. So, we rewrite the basis by replacing the departing variable with the entering variable. Then we divide the pivotal row throughout by the pivot. We will first do that and then explain. So, we wrote Z x3, x2, x5 and this remains the same, this remains the same. We first rewrite this row which was corresponding to the pivotal row by dividing the pivot which was 2. So, from here I am dividing this row by 2. 0 by 2, 2 by 2, 0 by 2, 1 by 2, 0 by 2, 12 by 2. That is what we write here 0, 1, 0, 1 by 2 and 0 and 6. So, up to the BI column I rewrote. So, this is the first column to be written. Then you look at this, there are all other elements, all these other elements have to be transformed to new elements now. Now, what I am doing is a Gauss-Jordan elimination method, but I will tell you how to transform this straight away. So, for all other numbers, the new table we get it like this is a older number and this is the number in the pivotal column in the row of E. So, any number you have that row there and there is a pivotal column. So, you have one element. Let us say you want to transform this number. So, you have this number to be transformed, that becomes old E, that is E, and this is the column of the particular element, and you have an element in the pivotal column of that particular row, and that is what we denote it as R. Similarly, number in the pivotal row in the column of E. So, let us say you are trying to convert this, transform this. This is there is a column and then you have a pivotal row and there is a element here. So, this is how we use this. This is the old number minus R into C divided by P, and P is the pivot itself. Let us say I want to convert this number 0. So, 0 minus 5 into 12 divided by 2. So, this is how we convert. Let us say you want to convert this number, it is 0 minus 0 minus 0 into 0 divided by 2. If you want to convert this, 1 minus 0 into 2 divided by 2. So, you identify corresponding to that number, you identify the pivotal column element and pivotal row element and divided by the pivot. So, this is what it says, E minus R into C divided by P. So, this you can get used to, you can start doing mechanically. So, let us say that you have this table, I will show you how to convert this. Let us say that you want to convert this 0 here. Okay. In 0, you identify the row. So, this is the row of this particular 0 and there is an element associated with the pivotal column in that row, which is minus 5, and there is an element associated with the pivotal row in that column, which is 12. So, this will be 0, which is the old number, minus 5 into 12 divided by 2. This 2 is the pivot, that will become 30. So, this number will be replaced by 30. Similarly, let us say that you want to convert this number 12, not except the pivotal row you do not touch because you have already divided. Let us say you want to convert 4 here, then what it will be, 4 minus 0 into 12 divided by 2, that is how you convert. The moment either this element or this element is 0, that number remains the same. So, like this, convert each of these numbers. Up to Z row you do not touch, up to the Z column you do not touch. Now, all of these coefficients, including the BI coefficients, you convert using this simple expression. Let us say you want to convert this number now, 18. Let me write that. So, 18 minus, this is 12 into 2, this is this 2, this 12 divided by this 2, that is a pivotal element. So, this will be 6. So, this 18 gets converted as 6. Like this, you write all the elements. So, this is what we do. So, this 0 became 30 by the way I have shown, and this 4 becomes 4 only, and you look at minus 3 for example, minus 3 minus 5 into 0 divided by 12. So, as I said, if either this is 0 or this is 0, this number remains the same. So, that number remains the same as minus 3. So, this is minus 3, and then you convert this x 2 as 0, let us say minus 5. So, how do I convert that? Minus 5 minus 5 itself, because that is a row, into 2 divided by 2, into 2 divided by 2. So, that will be minus 5 plus 5, that will become 0. So, like this you simply convert. Let us again show how do I get 5 by 2 here corresponding to x 4. X 4 was 0 here, 0 minus 5 into 1 divided by 2. So, that will be 5 by 2, that is what you get here. Like this, except the pivotal row, you convert all the other elements. That is how you write the W2. Once you complete all the elements, you should be able to read the solution. How do you read the solution? Z is equal to 30, x3 is equal to 4, x2 is equal to 6, x5 is equal to 6. This is the solution. And of course, the current non-basic variables, which are x1 and x4, they will be at 0 level. The current non-basic variables will be always at 0 level. So, this is a W number 2. What did we achieve in W 2? We started with Z is equal to 0 in W number 1. We have achieved a solution of Z is equal to 30. So, from 0, you have achieved an improvement. The Z value, which is the objective function value, has gone to 30 now. We ask the question, is the solution optimal? This solution is again not optimal, because there is one variable here which has a negative coefficient. Because there is at least one variable which has a negative coefficient, the solution can be further improved, and therefore, the current solution is not optimal. Then we have to identify the entering variable. Entering variable is that variable which has currently the highest negative coefficient in the Z row or the 0th row. And in this particular case, there is only one such variable, and therefore, that becomes the entering variable. So, we identify this as the entering variable. Once you identify the entering variable, you calculate Bi by Aij. If it is positive, this is not positive, therefore, do not calculate. 4 divided by 1, 4, 6 divided by 0, do not calculate, 6 divided by 3, 2. So, among the Bi by Aij's, whichever variable has, among those variables for which the Bi by Aij is positive, the variable that has the minimal Bi by Aij value will become departing variable. So, therefore, this becomes a departing variable, and this is the pivotal row, this is the pivotal column, and this is the pivot. Then, what is it that we do? We first divide the pivotal row by the pivotal element and rewrite that. So, your new basis will be Z, x3, x2 and x1 will come here, x5 will go out, x1 will come here. So, we rewrite the basis, this remains the same, this remains the same, and first we rewrite the pivotal row here by dividing the pivotal row elements here by pivot point. So, let us look at this. So, this would be 3 by 3 and 0 by 3, 0 by 3 and minus 1 by 3 and plus 1 by 3, and this will become 2. So, this is how the first transformation you do. After that, each of these other numbers you start calculating by using our formula that we have used. Let us say you want to convert this number 30 minus 3 into 6 divided by 3. So, that will become 36. 4 minus 1 into 6 divided by 3. So, 4 minus 1 into 6 divided by 3, which is 2. So, that is how you get 2 here. Like this, you convert each of these numbers and write the W number 3, much the same way as you did from W number 1 to W number 2. The same formula you use and then get the W number 3. Now, you look at the solution. Z is equal to 36, x3 is equal to 2, x2 is equal to 6 and x1 is equal to 2. This becomes the solution. Is this solution optimal? The first question that we ask after preparing the table is whether this solution is optimal. Look at the coefficients of the 0th row, coefficients in the 0th row of all these variables. There is no variable which has a negative coefficient here, which means that the current basis x3, x2, x1 are the current basic variables, and x4 and x5 are the non-basic variables. If you bring in either x4 or x5 into the basic variables, the z value will decrease because they have positive coefficients here. And therefore, because there is no variable which has a negative coefficient in the 0th row, this solution is in fact the optimal solution, because this solution cannot be improved further by bringing in any of the currently non-basic variables into the basis. And what is the optimal solution? Optimal solution is z is equal to 36. That is the objective function value. X3 is equal to 2, X2 is equal to 6, X1 is equal to 2. This is how you read the optimal solution. This is the same problem that we discussed earlier in the perhaps in 2 lectures ago, when I introduced the graphical solution. And what did we obtain there? This is a graphical solution for the same problem. Recall that this is your feasible space, and then this is a feasible space, and we finally obtained the optimal solution as this particular point 2, 6 and z value was 36. So, the x1 value was 2 here, x2 was 6, and of course, x4, x5 will be 0 at this point, and that is exactly what we obtain here. X1 is 2, X2 is 6 and Z value is 36. So, this is how you proceed from one iteration to another iteration. Essentially, in the simplex method, what we did is, we started with this point, which was x1 is equal to 0, x2 is equal to 0. In the first W here, iteration number 1, you look at the solution, x1 was 0, x2 was 0, because these were your non-basic variables, which were set to 0. Then we went to iteration 2. In iteration 2, what was the solution? You got x2 is equal to 6, but x1 was still 0. x1 is 0 because it is still non-basic variable. So, x2 is equal to 6 and x1 is equal to 0 was the solution. You look at the graph, where is that point? From this point we went to this point 0 and 6. Then from this point to this point we went 2, 6. Notice that from this point we did not go here, we went here. That is because this is the direction in which the z value increased faster than if we had taken this particular direction, and that is what we decide based on the departing variable. So, from which point to which point you are moving will be decided in the simplex W, both by the entering variable as well as the departing variable. So, in the iteration 1 we started with this solution, iteration 2 we went to this solution, and iteration 3 we went to this solution. Without computing the other 2 points, we decided that this is the optimal solution. The solution cannot be improved further. Now, this is a 2 by 2 that is a 2 variable problem. So, this is very simple to explain, but in large engineering problems, as I have been repeatedly mentioning, you will have thousands of constraints, thousands of variables, etc. It is not possible for you to trace from which point to which point you are going, but the algorithm will make sure that you are proceeding in an optimal manner. That means, instead of going here, if you had gone here, what would have happened? You would have to go here and then here, whereas you went directly here and then came to this point. So, in a large space of feasible solutions, you proceed from one corner to another corner in an optimal manner, and until you hit the optimal solution. And also recall that in the simplex W, simplex iteration number 3, the moment you reached here, you knew this is the optimal point. You did not have to enumerate the other solutions. So, you know when you have hit the optimal point, and there you terminate the solution. Okay. So far so good. We took a simple problem, and then we know how to formulate the simplex W's and how to move from one iteration to another iteration. Now, there are a few questions that will arise even in the simple problem. First, we asked whether the solution is optimal, and we could resolve that the solution is not optimal, because there was at least one variable which has a negative coefficient in the z row, and therefore, that is not the optimal solution. And then we identified the entering variable. How did we identify the entering variable? We said that particular variable which has the highest negative coefficient in the z row, that will be the entering variable. What if more than one variables have the same highest negative coefficient? That means, there is a tie for a entering variable. What happens if there is a tie for the entering variable? The tie for the entering variable is broken arbitrarily. You can bring in any of the variables. Let us say that in this particular example, we had a tie between x2 and x4. Let us say both of which had the same negative coefficient, which also happens to be the highest negative coefficient, in which case you break the trie arbitrarily, bring either x2 or x4. And you will see that immediately in the next iteration the other variable also comes into the basis, if that is leading to the optimal solution. So, the tie breaking for the entering variable is done arbitrarily. Alright, then we went into the departing variable. Departing variable, we calculated bi by aij's and then looked at that particular variable which has the minimum bi by aij value. What if there is a tie here? That means, in the departing variable there is a tie. In general, whenever there is a tie in the departing variable, this leads to what is called as degenerate solutions, or what is called as degeneracy. So, entering variable, if there is a tie, do not worry, simply take arbitrarily one of the variables, the other variable also subsequently enters a basis, if that is in fact leading to optimal solution. Exiting variable or the departing variable, if there is a tie, that leads to degeneracy. I will explain what it means here. Just let us look at this. So, when there is a tie for departing variable, it may lead to what is called as degeneracy. A degenerate solution is one in which at least one of the basic variables has a 0 value in the z row. Now, in general, the degeneracy will indicate presence of redundant constraints. Let us say that you had some constraints even with n greater than or equal to m, that means a number of constraints, number of equations is less than the number of variables. Even there you may have certain redundant constraints, and that may lead to degeneracy. What happens when you have degenerate solutions? Let us say that you had a tie between two variables for the departing variables, and you broke the tie arbitrarily and brought one of the took out one of the variables as the departing variable. In the next iteration, you may see that you get the other variable also as a departing variable, and then you get stuck in a loop. So, the solution does not improve, but you keep on getting one entering variable and another departing variable. So, the optimality condition is not satisfied. However, the iterations will keep on continuing in the same manner. One variable goes out, the same variable comes in again in the next iteration, again the same variable goes out in the next iteration, etc. Like this it keeps on happening and you are caught in a loop. So, the degeneracy in general causes cycling. So, you are unable to improve the value of the objective function. However, the solution is not terminated yet, because the optimality condition is not obtained. And in general, whenever such a thing happens, if you are able to catch the degeneracy, it indicates that there are redundant constraints, and therefore, the problem is not really well formulated. You will have to relook at the problem formulation. Okay. Then another feature is, you look at any of the iterations. Let us say x3, x2 and x1. You look at the coefficient of x3 under x3, that will be 1, and the coefficient of x3 corresponding to other two basic variables will be 0. So, x3 has a coefficient of 1 and x1 and x2 are the other two basic variables. So, x3 has a coefficient of 0 under x1 and x3 has a coefficient of 0 at under x2. Similarly, x2 will have coefficient of 1 under x2 and 0 under x1 and x3. x1 will have coefficient of 1 under x1 and 0 here. So, the basic variables among themselves will constitute a unit matrix 0 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 0, like this. This is iteration 3. Let us look at iteration 2 now. Iteration 2 is this. Which are the basic variables? x3, x2 and x5. So, x3 will have under x3 it will have 1, x2 it will have 0 and we are looking at x3, and x3, x2 and x5 are the basic variables. So, x3 under x3 will have 1, under x 2 it will have 0 and under x 5 it will have 0. Similarly, x 2 it will have one coefficient under x 2, but under x 3 it will have 0, under x 5 it will have 0. So, at any iteration the basic variables among themselves will constitute a unit matrix like this. So, this is one of the checks that you do, so that you are sure that the calculations that you are doing, especially on the transformation of the elements, those calculations are correct. So, what the check is that if you have x 1, x 2, x 3 as basic variables, under the x 1, x 2, x 3 the coefficient should look something like this. X 1 will have coefficient of 1 and in under other basic variables it will have coefficients of 0. Okay. When we looked at the graphical solution, I had also introduced what is called as a unbounded solution and an infeasible solution, and also multiple solutions. So, if you recall, when do we have multiple solutions? In the graphical solution, you just recall that when the z line is moving parallel to one of the edges of the basic feasible space, one of the edges of the feasible space, and it is increasing in that direction and just at the optimal solution point, the z line coincides completely with one particular edge, which means that which means that any point along that line, along that particular edge, is also an optimal solution, and therefore, you have multiple solutions. So, we must be able to identify multiple solutions in the simplex method. Then we also know that if your feasible space is in fact unbounded in the direction in which z is increasing in the maximization problem, if your z is increasing in the particular direction in which the feasible space is not bounded, then it leads to unbounded solutions, because z can be increased up to infinity without violating any of the constraints, which means the feasible space, there is no bounded feasible space, and that we should be able to identify in the simplex method. Then we also know in the graphical method, we also saw that there may not be a feasible space possible at all, which means that the region that is intersecting may not be found, or the region that is intersecting may not be in the first quadrant, because and thus violating your non-negativity conditions and so on. So, we must be able to identify infeasible solution, because as I have been repeatedly saying that the sizes of the LP problems will be quite large in engineering applications, and therefore, you will not have a control as you had in the graphical solution. So, a priori you may not be able to say whether the problem is feasible or not. So, in any iteration, as you progress from iteration to iteration, etc., you should be able to identify that it is either unbounded solution, or it may be infeasible solution, or you may have multiple solutions. Once you reach the optimal solution, you should be able to also identify multiple solutions. Let us see how we do all of this. So, you look at the final optimal solution here. In the iteration 2 in the previous example, we decided that this solution is not optimal and made this as the entering variable, because this has a negative coefficient and there are no other negative coefficients. Therefore, this is also the variable which has the highest negative coefficient, and we made this as entering variable, we made this as departing variable, reconstructed the next table, that is for iteration 3, and then we look at all these variables, all these coefficients here. Because there is no variable which has a negative coefficient in the z row or the 0th row, we said that this is the optimal solution. So, the optimality criteria here is that there should be no variable which has a negative coefficient, because if there is a negative coefficient, that variable with a negative coefficient can be brought back into the basis and we can improve the value of z. in this iteration, in the final iteration, x4 and x5 are the non-basic variables. x3, x2, x1 are the basic variables, x4 and x5 are the non-basic variables. Look at the coefficients of x4 and x5. This is positive 3 by 2 and this is positive 1. And therefore, they cannot be brought into the basis without improving to improve the value of z. I repeat that if you bring in either x4 or x5, the z value will only decrease and therefore, these cannot be brought back into the basis. However, if in a problem the currently non-basic variables, in this particular case x5 or x4 or x5 has the coefficient of 0 here in the final tableau, when your optimality criteria is met, it has a coefficient of 0. One of the non-basic variables, one or more of the non-basic variables has a value of 0. What does that mean? That means that this basic variable which has a coefficient of 0 can be brought into the basis, but the objective function value will not change. Z will still remain 36 because this has a coefficient of 0 and you are bringing a coefficient of 0 by using all your criteria of departing variable, etc. One of the variables will go out, this variable will come in and then you see that the objective function value will not improve, which means that you could capture two solutions. So, the multiple solutions is identified if one of the non-basic variables in the final table has a coefficient of 0 in the z row. This indicates that particular non-basic variable which has a coefficient of 0 can be brought into the basis. It was a non-basic variable, you can make it a basic variable without changing the value of z, which means then you got two solutions. You look at this, let us say that this led to a solution in which you can bring in x4 here into the basis back because it has a coefficient of 0. So, this was an original optimal solution. By bringing x4 into the basis, again you get another optimal solution still with z is equal to 36. So, you can capture two solutions. Once you have two solutions, this is one of the optimal solutions, x1 is equal to x1 etc. xn and x2 is equal to x1 dash, x2 dash etc. xn dash. You got two solutions. How did we obtain two solutions? From the optimal tableau here, the last tableau, you identified that particular non-basic variable and then brought that non-basic variable which has a coefficient of 0 in the z row and generated another solution. This was one solution and you generated another solution which still has z is equal to 36, but the basis will be different and therefore, you identified two solutions and these are the two solutions. If you once you get two solutions, you can generate infinite number of solutions. So, you capture two solutions by going to the next iteration by bringing that particular non-basic variable into the basis, that particular non-basic variable which has a coefficient of 0 in the z row, you bring that into the basis, generate another solution, that another solution still has the same optimal solution, optimal objective function value and therefore, this forms an alternate solution. And once you capture these two alternate solutions, you can generate infinitely many number of solutions. So, you can generate another set of solutions as x1 plus 1 minus alpha x2. So, x1 is this solution, x2 is this solution. You take 1 minus alpha x2 which is alpha with alpha varying between 0 and 1. Essentially, what we are doing is that we are saying you got this solution, you got this solution, you are generating all these solutions and this is along the line and therefore, you can write this as x1 plus 1 minus alpha x2. Of course, x1 will be x1 comma x2 here and that is small x1 comma x2 and small x1 dash comma x2 dash. So, let me write this is x1 x2 and this will be x1 dash x2 dash. So, what we are saying is that if this is an optimal solution and this is an optimal solution with a given z value, the same z value will remain here. the line joining these two will also be all the points along this line will also be optimal solutions. This is for a 2 variable problem. The same logic extends to n number of variables, and for the n number of variables you are writing it as x 1 plus 1 minus alpha x 2, where x 1 and x 2 will be vectors. And by choosing an appropriate value of alpha, you can generate different solutions. So, keep on choosing different alphas, you get different sets of solutions. Remember, all of these solutions are optimal solutions, and all of them will in fact lead to the same z value. And this provides an enormous flexibility in decision making, because you are sticking to a given optimal function, optimal value of the objective function, but you have an enormous flexibility in the decision variables themselves. So, you are getting different sets of solutions, all of which lead to the same objective function value. Therefore, capturing the multiple solutions is an important step when we are doing, when we are dealing with LP problems. And so, when we reach the optimal solution, that is the last W, you made the decision that this is the optimal solution, because there was no variable which has a negative coefficient in the z row. At that time, you also look at whether there are any variables which are currently non-basic variables in the final W, in the final iteration. There are some non-basic variables, whether out of these non-basic variables, any one or more of them have a coefficient of 0 in the z row. So, you have reached the optimal solution, but you are alerted to the fact that there is at least one of the non-basic variables which has a coefficient of 0. The moment you identify that, it means that there is a multiple solution possible. There are multiple solutions possible, and therefore, you proceed to the next iteration. So, you do not stop the computations there, although you know that z is equal to that particular value that you reached in the optimal solution in the final W is in fact the optimal solution, but do not terminate there. You go to the next iteration. How do you go to the next iteration? You make this particular non-basic variable which has a coefficient of 0 in the 0th row or the z row. You make that as the entering variable, apply your criteria for the departing variable, make one of the variables to be departing. So, proceed essentially to the next iteration, and you do all your computations, transformations, etc., you will realize that the z value remains the same, but you got a different solution, which means that you captured, starting with this solution x 1, you went to the next iteration, you captured another solution x 2, both of which lead to the same optimal objective function values. Once you get these two solutions, you can generate an infinite number of solutions by using x 1 plus 1 minus alpha into x 2 by appropriately choosing alpha. So, you can get infinitely large number of solutions, and this has a huge physical significance, because as I have been mentioning, let us say that you are talking about physical dimensions, and one optimal solutions got a certain physical dimensions, and another optimal solution got another set of physical dimensions. Both of these have the same objective function value, and therefore, you can choose any of these or an infinitely large number of other solutions, all of which leading to the same optimal solution, and therefore, this will have a great flexibility in decision making. So, we have dealt with today the simplex method, and we have chosen a simple problem to demonstrate how the simplex method works. We start with an initial basic feasible solution, and typically we start with putting the initial original decision variables to be 0, which means that we choose those original decision variables x 1 and x 2 in the case that I explained with as non-basic variables. So, the original variables you start set them as non-basic variables, which means essentially you are starting with the origin x 1 is equal to 0, x 2 is equal to 0 in the example that we discussed, and then start improving the solution. So, you move from one iteration to another iteration and keep improving the solution by every time asking the question whether the solution is optimal If the solution is not optimal, you identify an entering variable. The entering variable is identified by the highest negative coefficient in the Z row. By that variable, I repeat, the entering variable is that variable which has the highest negative coefficient in the Z row. Once you identify the entering variable, you compute the Bi by Aij's. That is a last column which is computed only for positive values, and then look at the minimum positive value, and the variable corresponding to the minimum positive value of Bi by Aij will be the departing variable. So, you rewrite the basis, and then you identify the pivotal column, pivotal row, identify the pivot, first transform the pivotal row by dividing each of the elements of the pivotal row by the pivot element, and then transform each of the other elements by the procedure that I just mentioned, and formulate the next iteration W. Like this, from one iteration to another iteration, you keep on progressing until you hit the optimal solution. The optimal solution is achieved when all the coefficients in the Z row are non-negative. That means, there is no coefficient which has a negative value, and therefore, you cannot further improve the Z value, and that is where you terminate the solution. When you hit the optimality criteria, you also look at the currently non-basic variables and what is happening to the coefficients of the currently non-basic variables. If the currently non-basic, if at least one of the currently non-basic variables has a coefficient of 0 in the final W, it means that this variable, which is a currently non-basic variable, can be brought into the basis without changing the objective function value Z, which means that you can generate alternate solutions. And once you generate two solutions, you can generate infinitely many solutions, and these multiple solutions have enormous physical significance, because you can play around with the solutions. That means, instead of having one optimal solution, you have large number of optimal solutions. So, you can pick up any of these solutions for physical implementation and so on. So, we will continue this discussion. Perhaps in the next lecture, I will start with an example where you can capture the multiple solutions in a LP problem. Thank you for your attention.